All right, as we highlighted yesterday, members of the House Judiciary Committee are demanding answers from FBI Director Christopher Wray after a new document has been released to them that showed that the infamous leaked memo targeting Catholics as potential violent extremists was not the product of a single FBI field office, which is what the director claimed in sworn testimony last month.
FBI Portland was involved, FBI Los Angeles was involved, so it wasn't just one-off, it wasn't just Richmond, it was broader than that. This is scary, but now it's becoming a pattern with the FBI. They tell us one thing that turns out not to be so accurate when we finally get the documents.
Well, that was Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan on Fox's Hannity on Wednesday night. Well, members on Capitol Hill are not the only ones who are looking for answers and demanding some explanations. State attorney generals from nearly 24 states have also been demanding answers, and the one leading that charge joins me now. Here to discuss this is Jason Miyares, Attorney General for the state of Virginia, from where the memo actually was leaked. Attorney General, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to join you and honored to talk about this important topic.
It really is an important topic. And, it's worth noting as we begin this discussion that this new document is a version of the memo with fewer redactions than the previous two. But this comes after 2 months of repeated request from the Judiciary Committee, and It comes just days before the August recess. So, what do you think about the level of transparency that we're seeing from the FBI?
Well, I think that's the big frustration, is the lack of transparency. And I can think of few things more un-American than having your own government label you as a violent extremist just because there's a particular manner in how you choose to worship. And this is very, very personal for me for two reasons. Number one, Virginia itself is the birthplace of the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, which is one of the underpinnings of our First Amendment. It was championed by Thomas Jefferson, carried in the Virginia General Assembly by James Madison, and really understands one of the founding principles of our nation is the idea that the state is not going to try to intimidate or impede your ability to worship God according to dictates of your conscience. And the second is, from a personal perspective, my mother fled communist Cuba when she was a scared 19-year-old penniless and homeless teenager. She literally didn't know where her next meal was going to come from. And she shared with me stories herself of when, after the communists took over in Cuba, when she would try to attend Mass, the communists would set up speakers and bullhorns outside of where she was attending Mass, spouting communist propaganda, saying that religion was the opiate of the masses, and looking upon suspicion anybody that would dare decide to worship in their faith. And so that is one of the hallmarks of why my own family came to this country. The idea that you should be able to worship in your place of worship and not look over your shoulder in fear. And I have heard directly from Catholics in Virginia that have approached me, both just out when I'm out at the store or at an event, saying, they sit there and they look over their shoulder sometimes and they're sitting in the pew wondering, do I know that person? Is he possibly with the federal government trying to keep tabs on who's coming in and out? And so that can have an absolutely chilling effect on what should be one of our basic rights, which is that the individual's ability to go worship as they see fit. And the idea of saying, some people may want to celebrate Mass or pray in Latin or another vernacular language, and somehow they're going to be targeted by the federal government. That's chilling. And so what we've asked from the beginning is answers. And it has been frustrating for me to see how long it has been to get answers. From the very beginning, we led the charge with some of my fellow like-minded state attorney generals asking for answers. We applaud the fact of Chairman Jordan for getting what we candidly somewhat suspected, that this was not just located in Richmond. This actually was much wider, as you've noted, in both Portland and Los Angeles. And so it really, really goes to the heart that there has to be serious reforms at the FBI dealing with both transparency and accountability, because unfortunately, we feel like that's not happening right now. It seems like it's falling on deaf ears.
Well, listen, given your background, I'm really glad and I have a greater understanding why you are leading the charge on this. The fact that this is coming out of Virginia, the Richmond office there, has got to be troubling to you. And as a result, as you mentioned, you are leading the charge with many other attorneys generals demanding explanations, demanding answers to all of this. What sort of responses have you been getting to this point?
Not much. I mean, to be candid with you, I will tell you this. One of the most chilling things for me as somebody who's a former prosecutor, and I work very closely with law enforcement, is in the memo, the Catholic memo that got leaked. And again, to remind your listeners and your viewers, this was leaked by a whistleblower. We wouldn't even know this was happening. Was when they talked about developing sources with access. And that's a law enforcement phrase, essentially about planning sources inside churches to basically spy on their fellow parishioners. I mean, think about what the implications.
We've got about 30 seconds.
Oh, sorry. So that, and then that by far, but we haven't gotten the responses that we want. We're hoping that Congress will reform it. We're having additional communication as well, but it's very frustrated the lack of response we're getting on something that goes to the heart of religious liberty in this country.
Well, it's frustrating to all of us, and we're grateful that people like you are standing in the gap trying to get some answers and to make a difference. Attorney General Jason Miyares from Virginia, thank you so much for joining us.